legislative session. Neither of us has an opening statement, so we'll just be happy to take your questions.
Pardon me, the House Republicans unveiled their property tax legislation now, so everybody sort of planted their flag. Given that, I'm just kind of curious where you both feel that issue stands and what you're seeing, that maybe there's pieces in there you like, maybe there's pieces you don't like. Just general thoughts about those.
Well, clearly property taxes are probably the #1 issue that's going to be discussed this year in terms of attention from all sides. And we look forward to digging into the Republican proposal, working with them on it. I think there's some similarities that are pretty unique to the House files, but at the same time, we look forward to working with the Senate as well to try and figure out something that's going to work for everybody. It's clearly an issue that is very important to Iowans, and we need to do something this year on property taxes. So that's where we're at.
So we're nearly 10 years into a Republican trifecta, and they have not done anything to help normal Iowans who need relief with property taxes. So here we are, second year in a row looking at multiple property tax versions. There are now 3 majority party versions on the table, one from the Senate, one from the House, one from the governor. We will look at anything that comes before us. The Senate Democrats are willing to work on a proposal that will simplify the system, make it transparent, help the Iowans who actually need help, and allow everyone to be at the table. It can't be a deal that gets made behind closed doors. It can't just help corporations, but if you want to work for normal Iowans to lower their property tax costs, we'll be there to work with you.
I know you've talked about other stuff when it comes to property taxes, but have either of you had conversations with Republican leadership in particular about the rebate aspect of your plan? From everything we've heard, that might be, correct me if I'm wrong here, but might be the only thing that gives people immediate relief. And I'm curious if they've seemed receptive of that. And
I have not had any conversations with them. I mean, they just kind of pushed out yesterday, and so we've been evaluating it. Obviously, from our position, we want immediate relief. And I think that's the one thing that will get you immediate relief with the rebates. To follow up on what Janice said, I mean, the reality is that they've been knocking around the edges for 10 years, and they've been promising relief for 10 years. They've been touting relief for 10 years, and I traveled the entire state this summer, and I would always start off by saying, has anybody in this room's property taxes actually gone down? Raise your hand. Not a single hand would go up. So everything that they've done so far has not worked. The rebate that we are proposing is immediate, and it's significant and would have an impact this year. So we'd like to see them obviously take the rebate proposal that we have, but we will certainly work with them.
The Senate Republican plan treats homes differently depending on if it's your residence or a home that you own and rent out as an investment, whereas the House Republican plan would give this $25,000 credit to everybody, any home, whether it's an investment property or something you live in. Do you have a preference between those two approaches?
We have not discussed the bills in detail, in particular because the House Republican bill just dropped. So we will be discussing that in caucus. For us, again, we need to see something that's going to give permanent relief, that will be sustainable, and that will help the people who actually need it. But the other piece that's really important is that local governments and other folks have to be at the table. They're the ones who provide public safety and other services. They need to have a voice in this.
And our proposal is simply to residential property. I mean, we think that's the place where it needs to be. That's where the discussion has to start, and that's where the immediate relief needs to be focused on, because those are the people that are hurting.
The House and the Governor both have in common the 2% cap on local revenue growth, with exceptions for new construction. Are you hearing anything yet from communities about that?
I'll be talking to some folks over the weekend. From the discussions that I've had so far, communities do not like the notion of a 2% cap. There are certain portions of their expenditures that are uncapped when you look at public safety and you look at pensions for police and fire that could way outstrip 2%. It's just gonna make, it seems to me like a one size fits all that probably doesn't fit every community in the state.
I think in terms of the cap, it's important to recognize the fact that everybody kind of has their own proposal on the caps. And what we as House Democrats are trying to do is to protect first responders, school districts, and essential services. And once we look at all of those and we protect those, for example, our plan actually has the state taking over the 411 pensions for first responders. And I think that would be a huge relief. And I think the other challenge we have when you talk to these, when you talk to cities and counties and school districts, the other challenge you have is that they're talking about unfunded mandates. When they're only giving 2% allowable growth or increasing in school funding, some of these schools have to pick that up, and they have to do it by raising taxes. So that's the unfortunate part, is you have unfunded mandates, and then when they're not funding schools properly at the appropriate level at the state with 2%, then the local school districts have to pick that up. You got to pay for it somehow, and unfortunately, it falls back on the property owners.
Lawmakers are advancing or considering a bill later today that would authorize over-the-counter ivermectin, and that's something that the governor is also proposing. So what do you think that we're seeing this push in both directions?
Completely irrelevant. People are worried about affordability. They're worried about how do they send their kids to school, and these guys are worried about ivermectin. I mean, this is ridiculous. I mean, we got to focus on other things. So that's our position.
Apologies if this was covered earlier, but eminent domain legislation passed in the House yesterday. I'm wondering what you're expecting out of the Senate and the other proposals that are coming from Senate Republicans on that issue.
All I can say at this point is I don't know that there's any alignment between House Republicans and Senate Republicans on eminent domain. In fact, I don't even know if there's alignment within the Senate Republican caucus on eminent domain. So I have no idea what we're gonna see in terms of a bill, if we'll ever see the House bill on the floor, if the House will ever see a Republican bill from the Senate on the floor. It's gonna be up to the Senate Republicans to put forward something that we'll vote on, and it started yesterday.
Leader Meyer, and I should have done my homework on this, so correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe your caucus had fewer votes in support of this bill that passed yesterday than the one that passed last year.
So what happened yesterday was performative. It's not real. There's some concerns within the caucus that we're playing games here and that there should be negotiations with the Senate. I think last year's bill was a bit different versus what we would like to see is a compromise where we can still build the pipeline but protect property rights, and that's where we're coming from. And so when you just pass something that's an outright ban, it doesn't make any sense to us. And we know that's not gonna be the final bill, Aaron. And so, let's have a serious conversation and get this done so that we can protect rural Iowa, increase economic development in rural Iowa, but also protect landowners.
So do you dismiss the environmental concerns about the pipeline? I mean, originally it was gonna be sequestering the CO2 underground. Now they're talking about enhanced oil recovery. So obviously that's not gonna be a plus from the greenhouse gas emissions perspective. I mean, there are other environmental concerns, but it sounds like the House Democratic position is that you want the pipeline to be built.
Well, the position is that we think that there's a compromise here, right? And so the compromise is how do we build the pipeline and create these jobs in rural Iowa, but at the same time protect property rights. So yes, we would like to see the pipeline built. At the same time, we want to protect property rights. So yes, we think there's opportunities here in rural Iowa to really kind of get some economic development, but at the same time protect property rights.
So what are your thoughts on the Senate's proposal then? Is that enough of a compromise with expanding the corridor, but using eminent domain as like a last resort sort of thing?
From what I've seen in terms of the compromise, I think that the Senate proposal needs a little bit of work, or the Senate majority's proposal needs a little bit of work. I have not thoroughly vetted it or read it thoroughly, I just know the concept. I think that it's something that can be worked on, but ultimately they're gonna have to come to some kind of compromise on this thing between the two bodies. And right now, everything that I've heard from the House Republicans has been absolutely no pipeline. And so I think that's a very, very short-sighted way to go. So I think we need to build the pipeline, but we need to protect property rights.
In your mind, what would protect property rights while also creating a structure that's predictable enough for a pipeline project to go through?
And I think that has not been fleshed out completely. I think Klimish's proposal, or Senator Klimish's proposal, is probably a good start to have the conversation, expanding the corridor. But at the same time, you know, it just needs to get done. It's going to get done. And whatever that compromise looks like, we will evaluate at the time. Obviously, from our perspective, we would like to see something a little bit broader than just the corridor. But, you know, I think you can look at contracts, what the future contracts would look like in terms of, you know, instead of using eminent domain, we have to really consider what those contracts look like. Treat them like wind turbine contracts, where it's more of a long-term lease situation than just purchasing the land.
Anything else, folks?
The House Higher Ed Committee is advancing a whole lot of bills. Or have Democrats seen anything in any of those bills that is something you could potentially support?
I'm not that familiar, Laura, about those particular bills. I have noticed, and people have come to me and mentioned some of the things that have been out there on higher ed. Timmy Brown Powers, Representative Brown Powers, and I are going to meet next week about some of those proposals and see what they. I mean, they're fairly active in these things. I mean, it's their typical. Some of the stuff is their typical culture war stuff. House Democrats are focused on affordability. They're focused on banning books and stuff. It's just not where Iowans are at.
And Leader Weiner, there was a Senate subcommittee yesterday on expanding the restrictions on gender identity and sexual orientation to grades 7 through 12. Do you have any comment on that bill?
This is not anything that Iowans have any interest in. They really don't. We knocked doors from January through December last year. What we heard was Iowans want housing they can afford, childcare that's available and that doesn't break the bank. They want grocery prices down. They want to be able to afford their health care and have doctors that are nearby. They want cancer rates to drop. They want their water to be clean. The rest of this is distraction and culture wars, and it's not what Iowans are interested in, and it's not what we're focused on.
Leader Meyer, one more quick one. There's a bill this afternoon, and you may not have seen this yet, but I'm just curious in case you have, that would allow elected officials, Congress, statewide office, state legislators to have their addresses redacted from county assessor and county recorder documents. I'm guessing the argument will be made that it's a safety thing, concerns about officials being approached at their homes. I'm just curious if you have a thought on that bill.
I haven't seen it. I mean, obviously, I think that's probably very appropriate given the nature of everything that's gone on the last couple of years and the temperature in this country and politics. I have no problem with that at all. I've been either on the city council or in the legislature for 20 years. I mean, people are going to find out where you live. But I think it's important that if people feel comfortable or more comfortable with redacting, I think that's completely appropriate. I have no problem with that at all. And I would say that I think you can already do it, but I'm willing to take a look at it. I will make a pitch for water quality because we have our water quality presser in a couple minutes, and so we will be discussing our proposals on water quality. So Janice mentioned water quality, so I want to mention that.
And because the House is gonna be having the House Democrats are gonna be having their press conference on water quality, I wanted to mention that we have a whole suite of bills in the Iowa Senate Democrats on water quality. They focus on things like making sure that the sensors can operate and are funded, that the DNR can actually have some teeth when they are trying to enforce against corporate polluters. Right now, they can only fine a maximum of $10,000. We need to make sure that we have farmers at the table, those who are actually working on this and want to work at this. And there's another great initiative that I learned about recently, which is the Iowa Nutrient Initiative that's funded through IDOLS, that goes to the Iowa State University, and they're working with at least 250 farmers around the state to test out different nutrient levels on plots of land that are very different and get the buy-in of farmers. So I think we need to work together on this, all of us together, so that we can improve Iowa's water quality, which is something all Iowans deserve.
All right, thanks everyone.